Hello, my friends. One of the things that I really pride myself on is just being real and authentic to who I am. And so this podcast is obviously for creative entrepreneurs. And because I run a very intuitive business and a very intuitive life, I love to flow with different information that comes my way. And I find that most of my listeners are women who own businesses or are thinking about owning a business. And if we're in our 40s, if we're in our 30s, like we have other things going on. We have a family usually. We have a spouse or a partner, and we have maybe some responsibilities involving our lives, right? Some of you also have a day job and a business. And so with that, there is often this feeling of how can we really look at our business and separate that part of us from it? Like, I don't feel like we can, and I don't want to, right? I want to live my life being a business owner, being a mom, and priding myself in the volunteer hours I do for my daughter's hockey team, or being able to be there for my husband. I make him lunch every morning. I make chicken, I make cauliflower rice. I do things to show people that I really care about them. And these things are important to me. And so it's not just my business that I run intuitively. I also need to run my life in a way that allows me to have this time to be the person that I want to be and someone that I'm very, very proud of. With all that being said, I love to add more context into my podcast, into my TikToks, into, my Instagram, all of the things, because I can't separate it. So why should you guys, right? I know that a lot of you are coming here because you're wanting that space and wanting to think differently about your current situation. You're wanting more ideas and more inspiration that allows you to be this woman that you're really trying to be. And so with that in mind, I wanted to cover a topic today that I find really interesting. And if you look back in all of my podcast episodes, you will find topics related to health quite a bit. I would say probably 10% of my episodes have something health related in it because it is part of me. It is a big part of my world. I'm big on nutrition. I'm big on natural and good eating habits as well as exercise and all of that fun stuff that as we grow, we realize we don't know enough about and we have to dive into at some point. So today I wanted to talk about some of the changes that a lot of us experience in our late 30s to early 50s before we're menopausal. We go through what a lot of people will call perimenopause. Now, I've done a lot of research on this topic. I am 41, but I've had infertility struggles my whole life, and I had diminished ovarian reserve, or DOR. And so for people like me, it is possible that we go through this stage a little bit earlier. And I kind of wanted to talk about what are these symptoms, but also could it maybe be something that we don't realize? Could we be experiencing these symptoms and labeling it without realizing that we have other things going on in life, that maybe there's some trauma work that needs to be done in order to release some of these? So without giving too much away, I first want to welcome you guys to Creative Entrepreneurs Unblocked. My name is Aubrey Barr. I'm a subconscious release technique practitioner as well as a Reiki master. I've been a massage therapist for 20 years and an energy worker. So I know a lot about these things, and I love that in my creative space, in my world as a photographer, I've been able to meet so many creative entrepreneurs that are really lacking and really in need of having a community where they can talk about these deeper things going on in their lives, including trauma work and shadow work, as some people like to call it. Now, I don't want to scare anybody away with that, because the reality is we make this a lot of fun. And the other thing is, it's not as hard as a lot of people think it is. It sounds scary to sometimes talk about trauma, but I have news for you. Every single person that will hear this or has experienced some trauma. And I would say that every single person on this earth has experienced trauma in some way or another. And that's not to label it. That's just to say, hey, guess what? We're here and life is not always easy. I really hate that talking about trauma or healing is kind of a negative thing for a lot of people. And so I really try to show you guys that not only can it be super accessible to you every day, but it doesn't have to be like this roller coaster in the dark and you get off and you're all sweaty and just like throwing up. Like it doesn't have to be that way. And I want to show that to you guys. And so let's get started on this topic today. I want to talk first about some of the symptoms that people complain about where we're thinking they're dealing with perimenopause. So there's hot flashes, there's sleep disturbances, right? People who either have trouble falling asleep or wake up in the middle of the night and have insomnia and are up for a couple hours. And then one of the bigger issues I'm going to put in this bucket of irritability. Okay. So there's a lot of mood swings that happen here. There's a lot of anxious feelings and worry and maybe some snapping, right? Like getting, we'll quote, triggered easily over things. Like all of that is kind of in this bucket of mood swings and a lot of women call personality shifts. Okay. So this is very typical in the 40s, right? Like that's what a lot of women experience. And before we just draw the conclusion that we're clearly going through all the hormonal changes, I think it is important to assess a few things going on here. One being that you have spent the last 40 years collecting experiences in your life that left a scar, for lack of a better word, that you took and your subconscious and your nervous system was like, listen, we need to remember this. We need to remember this situation where we got hurt because if we remember it, we will not let it happen again. And not only is this a lie, right? But it's a way for us to stay small. It's a way for us to not grow in life. But we've been collecting these experiences and we have now decided that we are not worthy of expansion. We've decided that good things can't happen to us. We've decided that life is meant to be hard, right? We've decided that being a parent is extremely difficult. All of the beliefs that you have decided based on your experiences are staying in your body. And they're mostly staying there because we don't know how to release them. We don't know how to emotionally let go of experiences. Keeping the lesson and saying, you know what? I don't need to remember this every day. I don't need to remember how somebody betrayed me or somebody hurt me, right? I want to be able to let that go. But it's so hard to do that when you don't have the tools. Okay. The impact of trauma on the body is crazy. There are so many emotional things that we hold on to that lead to physical symptoms. And I want you guys to understand that. Okay. Now, my background is massage therapy. When I started early in my career 20 years ago, I was very adamant that I was going to help people heal through massage because there's so many physical things going on. And I didn't really love anything about energy work. I thought that's too light. That's not really doing anything. And truthfully, I was not connected spiritually to myself at that point. And so I wasn't recognizing a lot of those things. I didn't have that deeper understanding, but thankfully, I have been able to grow into that over the years. And believe me, I had very distinct experiences early on in my massage therapy career where people had emotional releases strictly because I physically worked on these certain parts of their bodies. And I'd be sitting there like, I'm very empathetic at the same time, but they would just start crying on the table. And I thought, oh, are you hurt? No, I just, I feel like crying right now. Or this reminded me of an experience I had before. Like working on a certain level would bring them back to a situation where they had this big fall or where they lost their puppy. Like there was a lot of really in-depth things that I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I'm working on your neck and this reminds you of the time you lost your puppy. I'm like, that's kind of crazy, but I was open to it. And because I run an intuitive business, I thought, let me see where this takes me. And I learned over time how much our physical body is reacting to our emotional state. And that became more my understanding. And then I started saying, wait a second, is our physical body merely reacting to what we emotionally are holding inside of it? And this led me down a whole new path of trying to understand. And if you guys haven't read the book called The Body Keeps Score, it's an excellent book just about this concept. And there's also another book by Louise Hay called You Can Heal Your Life that has very similar underlinings. And so it's been a very interesting topic that has opened up my eyes and so many others that I know into this world of emotional healing. So on the surface of these symptoms, we're going to go back to the perimenopausal symptoms that people experience. The irritability, the depression, the sadness, the anger stuff, all of that is absolutely an emotional result of trauma being stored in the body. Let me kind of explain this through an analogy, okay? Let's say that when you're born, you have this empty cup, okay? And as you have life experiences, even as a very young baby, you start to collect these life experiences, right? And I would challenge you to not look at this as a negative or positive thing. Just say, well, this XYZ happened and this is what I learned. And so you collect that into this cup and, you experience things that are not great and you experience things that are good. And you realize that you now have these beliefs that are being put in this cup. But you also have experiences that leave you feeling like I'm all alone or like nobody listens to me or I don't have any friends, right? Like all of these things are being put into this cup based off of experiences that are not 100% true in all of your life endeavors. However, you've now put it in that cup and you're keeping it because you don't really know how to process those. And so what ends up happening is you get to an age where it's like, my cup is freaking full. Okay. I have no other space to add any more stuff into this cup. Like there's just no way around it. And so then you're driving your kid to school one day and they forgot their hoodie again at home. This sounds very familiar. But anyway, and you think, oh my gosh, how many times do I have to tell you to get your hoodie before we leave the house, right? I know parents are relating, but in that moment, you might lose your cool. You might freak out on them, right? Your cup is so full that you cannot process any more things coming into this cup because there's nowhere for it to go. And so this is where that irritability comes in, and you may lose it on them. You may get very angry. You may yell. A lot of people, and look, let me tell you something here, okay? I'm a human just like you guys. Yelling is not my thing, okay? And because of the healing work I've done, I absolutely find that it's not my thing. However, it doesn't make you a bad person when you lose your cool over stuff like that. What it does make you is recognize that I'm at my limit. I'm at my limit here. I need to do something to fix this. And a lot of people in situations like that might say, you know what? I'm so irritable. I just have nothing. I don't know what to do about this. You might go to talk therapy and you might come out of that and say, well, it was fun to talk about that experience and talk about it with someone that's non-biased and can say, hey, it's okay, but I'm still at my limit because you haven't learned to release those things. Okay. So please leave the judgment out of this. This is not a place to judge yourself. A lot of you already are, and that's why you're interested in things like this. And I just want to give you a space to say, you know what, I do that sometimes, and I'd love to know how to not do that. I'd love to know how to empty my cup a little bit so that I don't get to explosion mode with my kids, with my spouse, with the neighbor, whatever. But I hope that analogy helps you understand why some circumstances, logically, you could think, okay, this is really not a big deal, but yet I did not handle that the way I wanted to. I'm not happy with the way I handled that. That is such a great opportunity to turn inside and say, okay, what's really going on here? How can I shift out of this? Okay. Because the more you sit in that shame around it, the more you're not going to get any sleep, the more you're going to be completely fatigued, and it's just not going to get any better. So just understand that you have to be able to process and release and move on from there. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how trauma can induce inflammation. Now, a lot of the things that we deal with these days has to do with toxins coming into our body. It has to do with environmental factors that are out of our control, 5G stuff. Like there's so much that is coming into our body and our body's not able to keep up and metabolize all of these things. And so we end up in a chronic stage of inflammation. And so we know that a lot of people that experience different health related issues are dealing with an underlying cause of inflammation. It's such a big deal that virtually every autoimmune disease has a base of inflammation, right? It causes inflammation on the skin, in the stomach, on the whatever. It's all over the place. And so I think it's very much a problem with almost everybody in society that we're in this chronic stage of inflammation. And there's a lot to be said about that. And there's a lot of things you can do to help that with your diet, right? Just getting that under control can really help bring down the inflammation. But I will say that there is a definite link to inflammation because of trauma. Okay. This is something that's been studied. So I'll link some studies into the show notes for you guys if you want to check those out. But there is a link between traumatic experiences and how those lead to pro-inflammatory state in adulthood. Okay. So that is a thing. And that's just your body living on, let's say, nervous system dysregulation. When that happens, it's the perfect storm for more inflammation. Okay. There's actually a huge association between PTSD and increased inflammatory markers. So I'll put that link again in the comments, but it suggests a link between the psychological stress and the immune system activation. And so understanding that this is all almost a perfect storm of things that are going on, and trauma is definitely connected to that side of things. So when you're living in an inflammatory state, it's only a matter of time before you end up with some kind of situation where you need a diagnosis or absolutely at the bare minimum need extra help, medical help. Okay. So this chronic inflammation, it contributes to various health issues. And we already talked about autoimmune disorders, but also cardiovascular diseases, okay? And it's also very well known that it's a great place to grow cancer when you're highly inflamed. And so all of these things are not meant to discourage people or scare them or anything like that, but understand that your physical body does not know what to do with all this excess trauma that you're likely carrying around, okay? This got dark kind of fast, and I definitely don't want it to, but I want to be real with you guys and say that there's some of this is absolutely in your hands. You can change some of this, like today, okay? And I don't think people are as honest about that as they could be. And I'm pretty sure when they are, they get canceled, and that's okay. I'm here for it because this is a podcast. It's probably going to come back to haunt me in like 30 years. But regardless, there is a huge association here. And guess what? It's in your hands. It's in your hands more than you could possibly think. Now, I'm sure by now you guys probably noticed that I am a huge advocate for holistic approach to health. I absolutely love it. I mean, I had my baby naturally. I've done all the things naturally if I could and if it was in the best interest of me and my family. Okay. That being said, if you have anything going on here and you're like, yeah, okay, that's cool, but I need help like now because I'm, suffering or I'm having a lot of problems. I'm not here to discourage you from seeking medical help at all. 100% no. What I am trying to tell you is to help you connect the dots, if they're there, on how your emotional health is in connection with your physical health, right? Because these two things might be having the same kind of issues going on, and it's important to be able to recognize that. Now, if you need to seek professional guidance, for sure, do that. I want you to know that there's an overlap between the perimenopausal symptoms and the trauma responses. That's what I want you to take away from this. And I want you to know that there's a huge impact on the unresolved trauma in your body. Your body wants to heal it. And the way that it's reacting to it right now is, whoa, there's too much here. I don't know what I can do. And that's very confusing. And I know that through tools, through somatic work, through mind body practices, and maybe even counseling, there's absolutely a way to be able to streamline these things. But probably the biggest connection that I want you guys to make today is that your physical symptoms can and likely are a result of where you are emotionally in your life. And I have to tell you, I have had massive success with being able to release these stories, being able to reprogram the subconscious mind and also reset the nervous system through subconscious release technique and through energy work that I do with my clients. And it is insane how well that helps symptoms like what we discussed today. My friend, I thank you for joining me today for this episode. I hope that it was an eye-opener in ways that maybe you're experiencing trauma in your life and thinking it might be something else going on. And friend, listen, I 100% am always trying to get to the root of what we have going on in our lives. So that practice has led me into this work. And I know that it is a root cause of many other things that continue to suppress you from getting to the life that you really want, from being the person that you really want to be. And so I encourage you to seek out help in this part of your life, because if you can get that under control, you will see that so many other things will fall into place. It won't be such a hurdle for you anymore. And I really want that for you. So wherever you are, I hope this finds you well. I'm sending my love to you. And thanks for joining me on the Creative Entrepreneurs Unblocked podcast. I hope that this was inspiring to you. If you loved it, definitely leave us a review, because that's how Apple shares the podcast with other people. And we love it that we're growing so much. And I will put all my information in the show notes. I'd absolutely love to have 2 more private clients right now. That's the openings I have. And I also have still my star-aligned readings. They are very inexpensive for the time being until I finish with my certification. And that just helps us look at the astrology of what's going on in your life and in your business, with your career, with your relationships. And you get to choose which topic you want me to cover. And I will send you a 20 to 30-minute video on what I find. I'll show you what your chart looks like. We'll talk about some of the things that you might be challenged with and how you can overcome those best. And most of all, I just want to be an inspiration to you guys. And so I hope that all of this work has been that for you. And I hope you have a beautiful day. We'll talk soon.